Yo team, it's the exam coach checking in with you. I hope you've had a good Grimbo. It's currently the 30th of December. I'm going to crack this one out on revision timetables because I realise a lot of you are actually getting down to mock exam or exam revision over the Christmas break. It's an important time of year to actually get this rolling and get it started. So I thought I'd just give you a few thoughts on how you can lay out a timetable now that that Christmas period is over. And as we begin the new year, a lot of people have a bit of momentum in that it's a clean start, it feels good, and you can try and get the ball rolling once again going into 2019. Cool. I think where I want to start with this one is let's get clear on why we actually make revision timetables. The reason why we do it is because everyone knows that things get in the way of what we need to do or what we need to prioritize every day. That's life. Things that take away our attention, that distract us, that are just other things that pop up that we actually need to do because they're urgent or important or involve another person that we care about, whatever it might be. Things happen. And you need to try and create a structure each day that you can aim for. You're not going to hit it every day. No way. That's not the way things work. You know that every day you're going to have things that maybe take you a little bit off focus or off center. But as long as you're aiming for that thing and trying to get there and you keep on correcting course as you go, you're going to get to your destination. Think of it a little bit like a ship sailing through the sea. The captain sets a course for whatever direction, could be north, but as the ship sails, it's gonna sometimes veer slightly off that, and it's his role just to, or her role to, bring it back onto north and put it in the right direction. And that's all you've got to do with your revision. And the timetable is just a framework we use to make sure that day by day we're tracking towards that north direction for us, which is covering the syllabus, making sure we know everything within it, memorizing it all, and then being able to reproduce that information in the way the examiner wants to see it in that limited period of time during the exam. Okay, so now we know why we do it. I want to establish the approach. Now, this is just the approach I recommend. You can use another approach if you want, but I find this worked best for me. And not only did it work best for me, it worked best for the students I then began to work with after I, set up the whole exam coach thing and started to do this. And that approach, in one word, is flexibility. You have to be flexible. You can't be rigid in your approach, thinking that if I miss a day, if I don't get started at 11 a.m. on the dot for this particular revision session, it's all out the window and throw the toys out the pram, scrap it all. That's it. It's flexible. It can move, it can shift. You can adapt to certain situations. If your grandma comes around in the middle of your revision session, you go and see your grandma. You go and have a chat with her, and then you adjust your timetable to accommodate that unforeseen circumstance. But you make a judgment call on what's worth actually giving up the revision session for and what's not. So, for example, if you get a text message, you're not sacking off the revision session to go and answer the text message. Instead, you're flipping that phone pancake style, face down, and you carry on with what you were doing because you know that the revision is the priority, and whoever that person is, again, depending on who it is, context, things like that, can wait. Plus, just your willpower. What do you value more? Like, think about it day to day. Great. So flexibility is really important. There's a reason why. And the reason for that is what I've just explained. Plus, I think a lot of people shy away from revision because they think that if they don't have all the gear, all their ducks in the row, all, the flashy stationery, the nice notepads, you do need that stuff, but you don't need to be too kind of all the gear, no idea about it. Just get what you need. You just need a bit of paper. You need maybe a phone to take some digital notes on, or do your planner on, for example. Use Google Calendar. You need a few pencils, pens. You don't need a full rainbow set of colors. You just need a few basic tools. If you want a list right now, I can give you it. It's an A4 pad of note paper, maybe a digital device, a laptop or a phone is always helpful. Not absolutely mandatory, but useful. A black pen, a blue pen. You can even do all your revision in one color if you need to. If you don't have other colors, ideally it's great to have a little bit of color in there, maybe 2 or 3 different ones. You go for red, blue, and green, for example. But you don't have to have it. You could do other things to differentiate. The only reason why we use color is to differentiate sections of information from each other, right? Because it's sometimes easier to remember when things are in different colors because you can distinguish them easily from one another visually. And you can do that with one color by, for example, putting bubbles around text or squares around text or some crazy pattern, whatever you want to do. It's just that differentiation that we're looking for. So please don't not get started because you don't think you have the best equipment or the best setup. You need a basic setup, and if you want to extend that a bit, great. But don't think that because you don't have it all, you can't get started. Plus, don't think just because you have a fancy Faber-Castell pencil case, you're going to smash your revision and that everything's just going to fall into place, because it's not. You need to actually put the effort in, the grind work, the mental cognitive effort of figuring out how am I going to organize all this work that I need to cover, and then the daily struggle that is executing that work, getting yourself to do stuff when it is not going to be the easiest option in front of you that day. The easiest option, but the least fulfilling option each day is going to be to sit there and one, do nothing, or two, just play around on the smartphone because it's got an endless, you're playing a part of an economy there that is an endless pit of attention sapping stuff that will take up your attention. Some of it will deliver you value in terms of learning new information, entertaining you, allowing you to connect with friends, but a lot of it will distract you and not actually give you too much value, plus take away from a huge priority for you at the moment, which is doing well in your exams and ensuring that in the future, as many doors as possible are left open for you to walk through, rather than closing down a lot of options very, very early on in your life by not getting a decent set of whatever exams you're taking. It could be GCSEs, A levels, or if you're listening from another country, it could be the national exam that you take to give you a certain level of qualification in the society that you live in. Okay, next step. Let's have a look at this. I've broken it down into 7 steps, planning a revision timetable and creating one. And the first one that you really need to sit down and tackle is figure out how much time you have to revise. And the reason why you need to do this is because it's difficult to plan out a whole year of revision. It's much, much more feasible to plan out a holiday's worth or a week's worth or a couple of days worth, however much time you have to revise. Yeah, you need to be able to have a long-term view of things. So for example, if you're starting the school year and you've got exams at the end of it, your timetable is going to be a lot more high-level estimation on an estimation basis rather than day by day you're planning it out very granularly. But whatever time period you're in, for example, if you're in the Christmas period now, you know that maybe you've got a week or 2 weeks in order to get a bit of revision done. And then you might have a period at Easter as well. But you always want to be thinking, how can I cover as much as possible in the detail I need to in the time I have currently available? And then how can I just look forward a little bit and figure out, okay, I could cover this topic again in this period in the future, and then review it a few times. And maybe this one I'm struggling with at the moment, I cover twice now, and then it gives me an opportunity to maybe cover it once more in that period in the future that I've got to revise. So first of all, get clear on the period you have to revise for. If you have an exam timetable already, use that to track your revision against for each subject. So you should be always mapping your revision off of when you actually have each exam. It makes sense, right? You don't want to be revising something that you are getting tested on, let's say, last in your exam timetable, say the day before your first exam on another subject, because you know that after that first exam, you then have more time to revise the subject you were going to get examined on last, but you didn't actually capitalize on the time you had before to revise for the first exam you had. And pacing out your revision in that way is really, really important. Also, make sure you fill in your planner, and it can be a digital planner. You can use Google. So Google Calendar, that is. I actually recommend Google Calendar because the one thing it does allow you to do really well is make adjustments and have it with you on your smartphone wherever you go without the timetable getting messy and difficult to read. And you can color code things really nicely. It's very intuitive and easy to use. So I would recommend going digital. If you don't want to do that, you can go paper if you want to. It's just a little bit more manual. You might need to cross things out. Remember, we're being flexible here, so things might change and you might need to make little tweaks and adjustments. So that's why I think digital is sometimes better. But The point that I was going to go on to was that make sure that you fill out your daily commitments that you usually do on your planner. You want to make sure you're planning around these, and whatever those are, get them in there. If it's lunch, if it's dinner, if it's hobbies, sports clubs, get them down. And then at a later date, or as you become nearer and nearer to exams, you can figure out, is there anything here that I actually need to sacrifice? Is there any leisure time, social time, things I'd usually do that I need to cut out of my timetable because I need to make more time for revision? That is a perfectly acceptable thing to do as you get closer to exams. You just need to be in charge of when you're making those calls. And that comes from self-awareness of how you're currently doing and how you think you're tracking against the goals that you have for yourself in your exams. And it's tough, right? You got to make that decision day to day. Figure out, where am I in my physics? Where am I in my geography? Am I ahead? Am I behind? And then you've got to figure out, how do I make up more time in my day to cover that subject that I'm weak at? And it's your call there. You've really got to be honest with yourself. And honesty is always the best policy, as well as underestimate how good you are. Always be harsh on yourself. Say, right, I don't think you're up to scratch there. You're going to have to do another hour here, another hour there. Yeah, you can still go to the gym, but maybe cut it down from an hour to 45 minutes. Save time in little incremental factors like that. Okay, so after you've figured out how long you have to revise for and you've set yourself a clear deadline to work towards, the next step is figure out what subjects you currently feel confident with and what subjects you don't feel confident with. If you're not doing very many subjects, figure out what modules or topics or pieces of the subject you're studying you feel confident with and those that you don't. The best way to do this is just make a list, write the subjects you're weakest at towards the top and those where you're strongest towards the bottom. Give each of them a number, and that actually helps when you put them into your calendar or revision schedule, because it reminds you, okay, if something's number 1, it's high priority because I don't know much about that subject. If something's number 10, I know it's low priority because I'm feeling pretty good about it. And that is obviously the way it's been ordered out in your list that you've just made. The next thing that you should do is take into account a few factors when you're making the list. That is the volume of material to be covered. So an example would be in GCSE, English and history tend to have a lot of subject matter that could possibly come up in the exam, meaning you've got to cover a lot of stuff. Whereas if you look at maths, there's just principles that you need to understand. But once you understand those principles and how to apply them to each of the types of questions you're going to get asked, you're pretty set. You just need to practice, practice, practice. And when you get into the exam, you're going to be able to answer the questions and apply that same thinking. Whereas English and history, there's a lot more things that could come up that you could have no idea about if you don't actually cover that information that you need to just learn, specific to that particular period of time or the book or the poem or whatever it might be. So take that into account when you're marking yourself out on how confident you feel on each subject, as well as the mark weightings. If there is a particular topic in a subject that you know nothing about and it's crucial to that subject, there's loads of marks going for it in the exam, the teacher's mentioning it every class, it takes up a lot of space on the syllabus and you don't know it, that's got to be reflected in how you feel about the subject as a whole. So just make sure you're, again, honest with yourself there. Try and think through exactly what you've been covering in the year and how you're feeling about it. And that should help you figure out what subjects you're feeling best about and what you're not feeling so good about. So now we've got the amount of time we have available, plus how we're feeling about each subject. We've now got to start breaking down each subject into topics we can actually revise and build a bit of structure around. So when we sit down at our desks, we're not just doing random stuff that isn't actually going to contribute to a good exam performance, or we're just reviewing information that we already know because it makes us feel good and it makes us feel like we're making progress. Instead, what we're doing is we're targeting topics that we, one, aren't that good at, and two, we know that they're going to come up in an exam, or they're likely to, and that's effective revision right there, first and foremost. We haven't even gone into techniques there, but just being targeted in what you do, it's a great start. The best way to break up your subjects a bit more is look at the syllabus or specification for each subject. Look at how they're broken up. Each subject's going to be broken down up into different topics, and you can see this just through any syllabus or specification. It's on there. They're usually labeled something like, it'll say 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and then perhaps it'll go on to a new topic and it'll say topic 2, 2.1, 2.2, and it's labeling everything out for you. It's very, very useful. It's listing everything out into the topics and the subtopics. So in your mind, it's really clear on how everything is ordered and broken up. You can then use these topics as, oh, and just a quick point, if you want to find any of those syllabuses or specifications, number one, ask your teacher. Number two, just type in the exam board that you're taking exams under, and they have all the specifications there for you. They have, in this exam, this is what is going to be examined on. This is all the information broken down. And then the actual, obviously that information expands a bit because it's not just the one line that's on the syllabus that you need to know. The one line is rather just a description of the information you need to know that is contained within revision guides, textbooks, that actually explains it and allows a student to understand it and understand how it fits within the rest of the subject. And then you have to memorize that information and reproduce it in the exam in the way the examiner wants it, according to the question that's asked. So to carry on, you want to try and allocate 30 minutes time slots in your calendar for each topic. I recommend 30 minutes just because it's a good amount of time to keep you focused. It's that Pomodoro time length so the Pomodoro technique, 20 minutes of focused work against a timer to get you started, to get that momentum going. And then you can take a break if you want to, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then you do another session. It's just quite a rigid way of revising. I recommend 30 minutes because it just gives a little bit longer than that pretty short time period of 20 minutes, if you want to be honest about it and serious. And it also gives you that ability to, if you do have momentum built, you can go past 30 minutes if you want. If you don't get momentum up, you've only spent 30 minutes of not massively efficient revision, but at least you've clocked away 30 minutes and given yourself a good go at least getting some momentum up. Use different use different colors to differentiate subjects from one another on your timetable, and make sure you write the subject and the topic you need to revise so you know exactly what you need to do each session. You don't want to be sitting down and not be clear on what you need to do. So write the subject and the topic, and that'll stop you from wasting time flicking through stuff and being unclear. This doesn't have to be perfect. Just 30-minute time slots can be fit throughout your day, whenever makes sense, whenever's easiest for you. I think you've got to find the balance between topics that you're familiar and confident with and ones that you're not, so that you keep momentum going. If you're just battering yourself with stuff that you don't know on one day, you're going to feel like you're not making much progress. So maybe sprinkle in a few things that you're a bit more confident with and get through them a bit quicker to bring that speed up again, and then go back to something you find a bit difficult. And you'll go in there with a bit of confidence and feeling like you've progressed a bit already in the day by doing something that you find a bit more find easier, and then you can build momentum in that way. Also, position topics you're likely to find challenging when you know you work the best. So anybody who follows my Snapchat knows I like getting up early in the morning, and that's when I do all my difficult work. If you like getting up early in the morning and you're wide awake then and you work the best, stick all the tough topics in there. Do maybe 4 difficult topics, 30 minutes each. Or if you gain momentum in one of your 30-minute sessions, let it spill over and do an hour on a really tough topic, and you'll find you're actually making great progress and really getting stuck into stuff that you otherwise didn't know. And in these initial revision sessions, these 30-minute sprints, and it's up to you how much of this you want to do a day. There's no right or wrong. Again, I don't like using time as a success factor in figuring out how well you're actually revising. It's much, much better to do topics covered or amount of syllabus covered per day, because that's what actually matters. It matters that you're covering stuff, understanding it, testing yourself on it, and really getting it into your system in the long term by repeating it over time. So don't just go by how long you've studied for. If you're doing 5 or 6 30-minute sessions a day, that's good, but really think about what's actually being covered in those sessions. Are you making good progress? If not, you want to do more sessions. If you feel like you're working really well, maybe keep it the same or tone it back a bit and look at how you could balance out other areas such as health and exercise, keeping yourself stable that way. Other things like that just keep the momentum going over a longer period of time, because remember, sustainability is a really important part of exam revision when you're doing this with intensity over, say, a 2-3 month period. Another thing to bear in mind, these initial revision sessions that you do on topics, it's going to involve you taking bullet pointed notes from textbooks or revision guides around the topics that you're studying and condensing those bullet points down into flashcards or a more synthesized set of bullet points, so you're better able to understand and memorize that information. And then you've got to test yourself on it. You've got to say, can I remember those 3 bullet points? Can I write them down without looking at them? Can I walk to the other side of the room and mention the key stages of photosynthesis or whatever you're trying to learn? That kind of testing is what's going to actually get it into your system and make it stick long term. Repeating that over a period of time is also going to help. You can't just review this stuff once and it's going to go in, but that's factored into the rest of our revision timetable. Finally, just in case you're thinking, well, I could break my day into 30-minute chunks and revise a lot of different topics, or I could just revise one topic throughout the whole day and give myself 4 hours to do it. I would advise against that, just because if you don't give yourself strict time limits on work, you'll find that the work expands to fill the time you give it. So the fancy name for this is Parkinson's law, but essentially it is, if you give yourself a short amount of time to complete a task, you'll find that actually you're able to complete that task pretty quickly. Even if you can't complete all of it in the time given, you're able to get a lot of it done. Whereas if you give yourself way more time than you actually need, you'll find that you just go slower anyway, and you spend more time revising. So really try to condense down that time, and that's why I recommend 30 minutes to get yourself working quickly and efficiently. You don't need to be going crazy and working so quick you're not even taking anything in, or you're speed reading everything and it's not sinking in. Try and find that balance of, yeah, I'm working quick, I'm being efficient and fast and I'm alert, but I'm not going through things so quick that I'm not understanding anything. Finding that balance is really, really important. That's why I recommend 30 minutes and not making it too long, longer than that at the outset. Only going over 30 minutes if you feel like the momentum's there, and maybe stack on another 30 minutes onto that session to keep you honest with the time again. Okay, so after you've started to get in a few of these 30-minute revision sessions with just a short break afterwards and then getting back into it, again, if you've got the momentum, you keep going. If you're not feeling it, you do up to 30 minutes or maybe a little less if you want to, and then peel off, take a break, try and get your head back into a good space, and then revisit. After you've got your momentum up and you've started doing a few of them, especially for the topics that you're not so confident in, you want to start factoring in, and this is where the flexibility part of the revision timetable comes in. You want to start factoring in repeat review and testing sessions. So this follows the scientific studies that have been done on how we actually remember information. The first is we have to actively test ourselves on that information. So force our brains to recall the information without assistance. Practice in the environment that you're going to be tested in the end situation. So in an exam, you don't have any assistance with being able to remember the information you need to put down on the paper. So it makes sense when you revise, test yourself under the same conditions. Do some practice questions. Look, cover, write, check. Just basic testing strategies. If you've got to learn a whole load of vocab, cover your hand over one side of it, have the word in one language, and then repeat the word in the translated language that you need to write it down in the exam, without looking at what the answer is, and really test yourself in that way. You can do this on the move. The stuff I've written about smartphones and how you can test yourself just through recording yourself aloud, notes on the phone, the apps you can use that test people, they're all great, and it's down to you to understand that that's the way you're actually going to learn it. The notes are just so that you can understand it and kind of have that first pass of, okay, this is what I've got to learn. This is the information. Let's see roughly how it fits together. The testing part is the memory side of it, which is equally as crucial. So these repeat sessions are really important. And the way you do them is, you want to be honest with yourself. So much of I've said honesty about 20 times in this podcast. So much of revision is just about honesty, about self-awareness, about understanding where you're currently at with your revision and how you're feeling about it and what you need to work on. Great skill to have in the future as well, because if you can understand where your weak spots are and what you'd like to improve, you can really make some great progress. So with these review sessions, you want to factor them in, and you want to understand after each revision session that you do how you're feeling about the topic you revised. A great way to do this is on one of my YouTube videos. It's called the exam memory system. It basically goes through a spaced repetition spreadsheet that you can use, and you can use that in line with your revision timetable to actually figure out where your strengths and weaknesses are after each revision session. It uses a color grading system of red, orange, and green to basically mark out after each session how well you did in the mini test you gave yourself. And then you can figure out, okay, if it's red, which signals I'm not very confident on it or I didn't do very well in the test, I need to get a repeat revision session in pretty pronto. So that could be the next day, the day after, whenever fits in with the rest of your schedule, you've got to get something in there. And this is the important thing that is crucial about revision. Make sure that you are repeating the stuff that you revise. There's no point in covering things just once. You need to make sure that you're touching it often and regularly. So each day, check in and say, right, what am I good at? What maybe do I not need to cover in, say, a week's time? But what do I really need to work on? And make sure you cover that in the next couple of days, because that's what's going to help you solidify it within your memory. It follows the logic behind Ebbinghouse's forgetting curve, which is essentially what spaced repetition is based on. The idea that when we review and test ourselves on information, most of that information drops off from our memory immediately afterwards. And then the curve kind of flattens out as time goes by. And let's say we look at some information and a week later we might be able to remember, say, one thing. But if we interrupt the forgetting curve just after we have reviewed the information and let's say do another repetition or another test, we're going to remember more of it. And gradually, the rate at which we forget after we've reviewed the information is going to decrease, because the more information we're going to retain and the less information we have to forget, because we keep on reviewing it and we keep on refreshing it and testing ourselves on it and strengthening those neural connections that actually allow us to remember information. Finally, I just say, make your timetable achievable. Don't beat yourself up if you have a bad day or you give yourself outrageous expectations and targets to do 14 hours of revision a day, or you cram, or things that just aren't really attainable. You really want to start planning now. And this is why I've made this podcast now, is so that if you're listening to this, you can really figure out how much time do I have and how can I really pace this stuff out. So I'm just doing little and often every day. And hopefully by the time, say, if you're taking your exams in May or June, hopefully by the time late Easter comes around, you're actually feeling pretty confident on a lot of things. You're just tying together loose ends. You're looking at detail, which is often what gets the best grades. The foundations are needed for everybody, but if you really want to get the best grades, it's in the detail. And that's how you want to be going with it. Just organization and planning. It's so key, and it keeps the stress levels really, really low as well. And another way to do that is don't give up what you already do in your day-to-day schedule. If you do sport, if you do any kind of hobby, any kind of music, any kind of things with friends that make you, relaxed and happy, keep doing those things because they're important. As you move forward to exams, yeah, you might need to give a few of them up to make up more time for revision, depending on how you're feeling. But it's really important to have a balance in the way that you're going about your exam revision. And you want to refer to your timetable often. Have it with you on your phone. You can write it down on paper if you want and have it with you. Another thing that I used to love doing, and I recommend this to a lot of people who are doing the 7-day exam plan when they're looking just for a little breakthrough in the way they revise, is forget about the timetable for a day, and just to get some momentum going, just almost instruct yourself, write down on a piece of paper, what are the next 3 actions I'm going to take to get me closer to where I want to be for my exams. And you'll find that it becomes completely clear what you need to do, because you'll write down, okay, I need to sit down at my desk, I need to pick up a pen. It sounds like baby talk and stupid, but it will actually get you doing it. I need to pick up a pen, an A4 piece of paper. I need to start writing out some bullet pointed notes on this particular topic that I'm worried about in the textbook. I need to sit with it. I need to Google some information on it if I'm unsure on exact pieces, and figure out if there's any information out on the internet or YouTube where there's a teacher who's talked about this subject in more detail. I need to get my head around it, and then I need to test myself on it so I remember it, and I need to repeat that over the next 5 days, maybe 20 minutes a day or 15 or whatever makes sense with your schedule. Really, really important that you just figure out little hacks to get momentum going. The other thing I'd say is exam success is always going to be determined by hard work a lot of the time. You can't just expect to put in a little amount of time each day and to be able to crack out some amazing results or achieve as much as a person who's been doing a solid 4 or 5 hours or 8 or 9 hours over the Easter break of real focused, hard revision. It's just not feasible. And you look at anybody out there who has achieved anything. I have down here just in my notes, I watched a video by Elon Musk. He seems to be very much like at the forefront of a lot of ambitious thinking at the moment with his space shuttle stuff and the electric car. And you'd expect maybe a guy like him to really be about smart work, and clearly he is about smart work. So what I mean by that is figuring out the most efficient ways to do things. But in an interview that I saw, he just talked about putting in the work. He said, if you work, I don't think he said these exact words, but the analogy was the same. He basically said, if you're working 100 hours a week and everybody else is working 50, you're going to get double the amount of work done they get done each week. It's as simple as that. And yeah, they might say they're working smart or efficiently. You're doing 100 hours of work a week, smart and efficiently. You're doing the same because you're trying to work smart and work hard. You're using those same principles of making sure you're targeted in your revision and you're revising the right stuff, using the best techniques, but you're just working harder, you're working longer, you're putting in more effort, you're giving yourself more opportunity to understand and memorize the information. So never forget that. The amount of time you put in per day is important, though it is not the metric that you should be always measuring yourself against for success, because the quality of that time obviously does matter. If you're putting in a lot of time and a lot of high quality work, then you're in a great spot and you will do well in your exams because you've got the basics down and you're understanding that hard work is a key factor that you can control. And if you put a lot of it in and you focus on the quality of that hard work, you're going to get a lot out. The other thing is just be flexible. I know I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. The best students often have the ability to just roll with the punches in terms of what pops up in the day, figure out whether they need to spend time and attention on it, and figure out when they need to prioritize their revision and get really good at doing that. And the other thing is, if you find yourself with 20 minutes free, use it. Use that time. Figure out how you could maybe give yourself a quick test on an app on your phone. There's loads of them look at some of the videos I've done on Active Recall on YouTube, listing out apps there. Ones that spring to mind: Quizlet, Anki, Seneca Learning. Those platforms are fantastic for just giving yourself a quick test. Make sure that you're targeting stuff that you don't know. You're not just answering questions you do know, but really important that you look to just take advantage of time when you have it. The other thing revision timetables really help you with is discipline and focus. Giving you that structure. People need structure to achieve things. And the revision timetable, at least for me, was one of the first times I really structured my day in a way that was very, very targeted towards a specific goal. I took just over Christmas, actually, I took just a little 48-hour detox. I like to do it on holiday times. If you remember, I did one in the summer as well, where I just don't look at any screens or smartphones in that time period. And the internal, my internal chatter and kind of the information that is whizzing and whirring around in my head a lot day to day, I think I can control it pretty well, and I've got everything, under wraps, in control. But after taking this 48-hour detox, and I remember the last one I took at the end of the summer, I felt the same thing. It's amazing how much more clarity and settled and relaxed you are when you just don't have all that stuff whizzing around in your head, even if you are in control with it. And a revision timetable is really going to help you just focus on the important stuff, I should say, and not get distracted by things that are irrelevant or not the priority. It's going to tell you when you need to work, how long you need to work, when you're going to take your break. It's going to give you that really nice structure and clarity to focus on what is important for your long-term goals. I want to recommend 2 other podcasts you could listen to that are earlier episodes, but very, very relevant to this topic. The first one is called Systems Move You Forward. It's episode 29. I did this one when I was working at VaynerMedia, and it was all about how I was noticing that any good business has particular systems that people stick to in order to get work done effectively. essentially the same as a revision timetable. But within that system, there is a bit of flexibility that allows people to find more efficient ways or adapt that system to their personal needs just so it works for them. Because those are the best kind of systems, right? The ones that work out right, but accommodate for people's needs so that they actually enjoy being part of that system and working within it. The other thing that I'd recommend you listen to is a podcast called Work Expands to Fill Time. It's episode 35. It basically explains Parkinson's law, and it's just a nice little explanation of that. And I think I give a few examples in there of just what I was going through at the time and how I saw that actually work in action. Okay, have a cracker. I hope you have a good new year. It's coming up to the 31st. Whatever you're doing, have a great time. Enjoy, and yeah, just keep the run rate, keep the ball ticking over, keep the momentum moving down the field of play. Make a little bit of progress each day, and you'll find that you're in a decent position come exam season. The stress is going to be low, and I urge you just get started now, even if it is just writing out that first practice revision timetable or getting Google Calendar. Just get started. And if you have any questions, as always, contact me on Snapchat at the Exam Coach, on WhatsApp. My number's on the website. You can just message the account. I'm on the business account as much as I can be, so just message me on there. If you really want to get the structure sorted, the exam performance techniques sorted, the revision techniques sorted, plus WhatsApp support that's tailored to you, get on the 7-day exam plan. It's a fantastic program. Students love it, and I love working with students through that program because it really allows me to look at what they're doing and figure out what works best for them in their circumstances, but also just give them the bread and butter, the tried and true, the stuff that really does work to get you the exam results you need to keep those doors open in the future. Okay, I'm going to check out. Have a cracker, and I'll see you shortly. Checking out.